Learning Vietnamese. What's easy and what's hard? An analysis of the Vietnamese language by Tim T. Hoang. Learning Vietnamese. What's easy? What's hard? Vietnamese language is much simpler than English language in all aspects: pronunciation, grammar, and vocabulary. It uses the Latin alphabet. Therefore, learning it is not very difficult for English speakers. The harder part is to recognize differences in tones with the tone marks, as it's a tonal language. Number one, pronunciation. It's a monosyllabic language. Every word has only one sound or one syllable. While there are many two-word terms, each word has only one syllable. There's a strict rule for pronunciation. One vowel or one vowel combination has only one way of pronunciation, no exception. There are 5 main vowels: a, e, o, u. There are 6 more vowels with sound changing marks: a, o, u. For the vowel combinations, it's simply 2 separate vowels being pronounced linking each other to produce a mixed syllable. 2. Because of strict pronunciation rule, there's a consistency between how the word spells and how the word sounds. Vietnamese language doesn't have homonyms because there's no 2 different words with the same sound. With one syllable, you can only have one way of writing, and almost every word has one correct spelling only. 3. The ending consonant is never pronounced. 4. Because all the words are monosyllabic, there's no stressed syllable like English. 5. There's no intonation in a sentence. Every word is pronounced with the same pitch, same volume. We can say that Vietnamese speech is monotone and flat. You can imagine a line of soldiers with the same height and the same weight. 6. As there's no stress and no intonation, Vietnamese is a syllable-timed language, while English is a stress-timed language. Again, imagine a line of soldiers who are not only with the same height and same weight, but also marching in the same speed and the same movement. 7. However, Vietnamese is a tonal language because it has 5 main tone marks, or dấu, as Vietnamese say. These are 5 Vietnamese main tone marks. The first one, dấu huyền, looks like reverse slash above. With this one, the tone falls. The second one, dấu sắc, looks like slash above. With this one, the tone rises sharply. The third one, dấu hỏi, looks like hook above. The tone rises, then falls. The fourth one, dấu ngã, looks like lying hook above. The tone rises, then falls, then rises again. The fifth one, dấu nặng, looks like dot below. The tone falls, but very abruptly and heavily. Where the word has no tone mark, then the tone is flat. Now, listen carefully to 6 Vietnamese words with no tone and 5 different tone marks. Ma, flat. Ma. Ma rises sharply. Ma. Ma falls. Ma. Ma falls abruptly and heavily. Ma. Ma rises then falls. Ma. Ma rises then falls then rises. Ma. The tone marks not only change the tone but also give the word a different meaning. The words with the same spelling but different tone marks are not related. They are not the words in a family. Thus, ma, 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 ma have different tones, different meanings, and are not related to each other. 8. There are 3 vowel sound changing marks. 1. Cone head above, found on top of vowel A or O. Without the mark, vowel A sounds A, but with the mark, it sounds A. Vowel O without the mark sounds O, but with the mark sounds O. Am, om, om. Number 2, smiling side above, found on top of vowel A. With the mark, it sounds A. Am. Number 3, upper right attached hook, found on upper right corner of vowel O or U. Vowel O without mark sounds O, but with the mark, it sounds E. Vowel U without the mark, without the hook, it sounds U, but with the hook, it sounds U. Hu, hu. Recognizing the differences in 5 tone marks, plus 3 vowel sound changing marks, and how to mimic the tones are the biggest challenge in speaking Vietnamese for non-native speakers. However, the good thing about speaking Vietnamese words with tone marks is even if you say the word with no tone mark or wrong tone, Vietnamese still can understand you. It works the same way like foreigners speak English with a heavy accent, yet English speakers still understand them. Examples, instead of saying Saigon, you say Saigon, they know you mean Saigon. Instead of saying tôi means I, you say tôi, they know you mean tôi. 9. Also, there are some Vietnamese sounds that are non-existent in English pronunciation. First, the h sound, created by 2 consonants K and H, like in khanh. So, Vietnamese would pronounce khong and cong differently. Number 2, the sound ng at the beginning of the word, created by 2 consonants N, G, like the very popular Vietnamese last name Nguyen. So, Vietnamese would pronounce Nguyen and Nguyen differently. 3. The sound Nh created by two consonants N and H at the beginning of the word, like in Nha. So Vietnamese would pronounce Nha and Na differently, though much smaller than the US, Canada, and Australia. The varieties in accent all over the country make Vietnamese listening comprehension a big challenge to non-native speakers. In general, there are three main regional accents: Northern, Central, and Southern. But among them, there are sub-accents as well. For example, among Northern, Hanoi accent is different from Nam Định accent. Among Central, Huế accent is different from Nghệ An accent. Among Southern, Saigon accents is different from Mekong Delta accent. But Hanoi accent is the standard, as pronunciation of residents in the capital is the most accurate. 2. Grammar. As a compensation for pronunciation, the grammar of Vietnamese language is very simple. Vietnamese is an isolating, independent language. The nouns or verbs don't change with changes in singular plural mode, in first, second, third subject, in time of action, in modes of verb, etc. Instead, Vietnamese language uses indicators words before the nouns or verbs for all those changes. 1. Verb tenses. Only one present tense, only one past tense, and only one future tense. Vietnamese are not so sensitive, so conscious about the time when the action happens, like English language. So they use three tense markers, đang, đã, sẽ, before the verb, but keep the verb in base form. For actions happen in the present, Vietnamese use present tense marker đang before the verb, or in case there's an adverb of time, then no đang is needed. For example, tôi đang học Anh văn. I'm learning English. Tôi học Anh văn mỗi ngày. I learn English every day. For action happened in the past, Vietnamese use past tense marker đã before the verb, or in case there's an adverb of time, then no đã is needed. For example, tôi đã đi chơi Paris năm rồi. I visited Paris last year. Tôi đi chơi Paris năm rồi. I visited Paris last year. In fact, the second sentence is more popular because there's an adverb of time, năm rồi, last year. So Vietnamese don't bother adding đã before the verb đi chơi, visit. Using đã too often makes the speaker sound unnatural and unnative. For action happen in the future, Vietnamese use future tense marker sẽ before the verb, or in case there's an adverb of time, then no sẽ is needed. For example, tôi sẽ đi chơi Paris năm sau. I will visit Paris next year. Năm sau tôi đi chơi Paris. Next year, I visit Paris. 2. The verb doesn't change with the subject. For example, tôi học Anh văn. I learn English. Nó học Anh văn. He learn English. 3. The verb to be means thì là in Vietnamese. It's usually omitted if it is followed by an adjective. For example, cô ấy đẹp, she beautiful. But cô ấy là một học sinh, she is a student. So in that case, the verb là is needed. 4. Because Vietnamese verbs are not inflected, so there are no auxiliary verbs like English. Questions are formed by subject plus có plus verb plus object or nothing plus không at the end. Example, em có yêu anh không? You have loved me, no? Answers are formed by some confirmative words like có, vâng, dạ, phải, đúng rồi, or some negative words like không, không phải, không đúng. Negative statements are formed by the word không and the verb. Example, em không yêu anh. I no love you. 5. No change in singular noun to plural noun, but plural indicators những or các may be added before the noun. For example, một cái ghế, one chair, hai cái ghế, two chair. Một cái ghế, a chair, những cái ghế, some chair. 6. While possession in English is formed by the word of or apostrophe s, Vietnamese use the word của. Example, cái nón của ông ấy, the hat of him. It can even be omitted. Example, cái nón ông ấy, the hat him. There are no possessive pronouns his, hers, theirs, ours, equivalents in Vietnamese. 7. Vietnamese comparative and superlative of adjectives are simpler than those of English. There's no difference between long and short adjectives. For comparative, Vietnamese add hơn after the adjective. Example, đẹp hơn, more beautiful. Xinh hơn, prettier. For superlative, Vietnamese add nhất after adjective. Example, đẹp nhất, the most beautiful, xinh nhất, the prettiest. 8. Normally, the adjective is after the noun. Example, căn nhà màu xanh, the house is green. Except when the two-word nouns are Chinese Vietnamese terms, then the adjective is before the noun. Example, siêu thị, supermarket, because both siêu, super, and thị, market, are Chinese Vietnamese terms. However, there are two complex issues in Vietnamese grammar. 9. The way Vietnamese address each other can be very complex to non-native speakers. While for English speakers, you is a catch-all pronoun to the person you are talking to, Vietnamese language has a dozen of you pronouns, depending on the gender and the age of the person the speaker is talking to. In original sense, they are kinship terms to call relatives, but Vietnamese use them for both relatives and non-relatives. This addressing way is influenced by Chinese culture. It means to treat everybody as relatives. Here is the table that shows you there are 16 you pronouns in Vietnamese language. We have two main columns, male and female. Then under the main column, there are two sub-columns, older than speaker and younger than speaker. So on the male side, if the person you are talking to is older than you are, then you can call him ông, means grandpa, bác means older than that uncle, chú means younger than that uncle, and anh means older brother. If the person you are talking to is younger than you are, you can call him em, means younger brother, cậu means younger than mom uncle, or chú em, cháu nephew, and mày root or inferior you. If the person you are talking to is a female, and if she's older than you are, you can call her bà, means grandma, bác, means older than mom aunt, thím or dì, means younger than mom aunt, and chị means older sister. If she's younger than you are, you can call her em, younger sister, cô, younger than that aunt, or cô em. You can call her cháu, means niece, or mày, root or inferior you. To make it even more complex, if the person they are talking to is at the same age, Vietnamese can also call ông, male you, bà, female you, mày, very friendly you, bạn, bồ, friend, or cậu, buddy. Ông is also the equivalent of Mr. Bà is also the equivalent of Mrs. And cô is also the equivalent of Miss. To make it easy for foreigners, I would suggest if the person you are talking to seems to be in the middle to old age bracket, you call them ông for male, bà for female, and if they are young, call them anh for male or chị for female. The same as no universal you in Vietnamese language, there's no universal I. How Vietnamese call themselves in conversation depends on how they address the talking partner. But for foreigners, I would suggest you say tôi, means I, to every Vietnamese you talk to. 9. The classifiers or special articles before Vietnamese nouns are a challenge to Vietnamese language learners. While English has only 3 articles, a, an, and the, Vietnamese language has many classifiers. Vietnamese classifiers are used to give objects an attribute such as shape or animacy and untranslatable into English. So many examples below: con dao, cái kéo, chiếc chiếu, sợi chỉ, cọng lông, cuốn phim, cây vàng, ngọn cỏ, đóa hoa, chiếc đá, etc. While con is usually used for animals like con chó, dog, con mèo, cat, etc. And cái is usually used for objects like cái ghế, chair, cái bàn, table. It's unexplainable why Vietnamese call con dao but not Kai Yao. Asking them why is the same as asking English speakers why weight is pronounced weight, but height is pronounced height, although the spelling is the same. So just learn by rote and do them. 3. Vocabulary. Vietnamese vocabulary is about 1/25 of English vocabulary, which means less than 40,000 single terms. Almost all sophisticated terms relating to economy, politics, science, literature have Chinese language's origin, as Vietnam was a Chinese colony for 1,000 years. The longest Vietnamese word has only 7 characters, Nguyen, so spelling Vietnamese should be very easy compared to English. Absolutely no spelling competition, regional or national. Due to a limited vocabulary, Vietnamese language has to use many original English terms as they have no Vietnamese equivalents. Vietnamese language is not without challenges to Westerners, but in general, thanks to its use of Roman alphabets and its simplicity in grammar and spelling, is fairly easy to learn. As Vietnamese is growing as tourism and work destinations, more and more Westerners gain proficiency in Vietnamese language. Some sing and speak and write Vietnamese so well that they surprise native Vietnamese speakers. Examples are Dalina and Kio Yok on Facebook.